right, welcome back to the Paranormal Classroom, where we explore the strange, the spooky, and the shadowy corners of history. Today, Amanda, we're going to dive into a story that combines true crime, my favorite, a dash of quackery.
Oh, I love it.
And some haunting ties to Seattle's past, our big city neighbor to the north.
I love it when this is your second one in a row that's like local.
I love the local stuff. I think that's really fun because I think our more media audience might even be people who we live near.
Yeah.
So that's something that they can connect to. And also I'm proud of where we live. There's so much history and cool stuff going on around here that if you don't live here locally, come visit. Like Seattle area, Washington State, particularly Western Washington, but even the eastern side of the state, we have everything in Washington. Yeah. Everything. But before we dive into all of that, especially the quackery bits, what's haunting you this week?
What is haunting me? You know what? I just was thinking while you were talking just now that how we should need to do something on Bigfoot because Washington is famous for Bigfoot.
That's always like backburnered. Like if you imagine a stovetop with like 4 burners, like the old school style, it's back right. Like it's always there and, simmering. It's always simmering because he's my favorite. I have a tattoo of Bigfoot. My gosh. I love Bigfoot.
Yeah, we'll do something on Bigfoot soon.
It just feels like where to even begin. However, I do have a contact who's connected to Bigfoot in major ways. And he's told my husband, he's more directly connected to my husband. So he's told him that he would do our podcast for us. So when I feel like we're ready for that level of celebrity guest, we'll go with it.
Oh, it's exciting.
I think it'll be super fun.
So I think what's haunting me is today's the first time we are recording in your home, not in a car, with the laptop. It's much more official. We're getting some recording stuff set up. And we're looking at each other.
Yeah.
It's the first time that we're recording
not
looking at each other.
You're like eye to eye.
Staring into my soul.
It's like a dinner date. And Amanda's having a Diet Coke, and I'm having a mimosa in a can.
Yeah.
For this dinner date.
Cheers.
At noon. Cheers.
At noon on Sunday.
Yes, salud. Cheers to an upcoming new year. We're recording just before Christmas. It's, what is today? Sunday, December 22nd. Right around the corner. And we just got out of school.
Yeah.
Our school year, this first term went so late. December 20th was our last day. I don't know about you, but as a parent, I don't know who keeps voting for this calendar like this that gets us right up to Christmas. Yeah. And then we have through January 6th. I don't need through January. What am I doing?
No.
What am I doing between the 1st and the 6th of January?
Before Christmas to get ready for
prep.
Christmas. If you celebrate, yeah.
And I hate wrapping. Wrapping.
And now you have to wrap it all in 2 days.
Today. So, I'm doing it this afternoon.
Sorry.
It's a nightmare. But it's a blessing.
Oh my gosh, we got a puppy, and that's a whole other story.
That's a podcast.
That's a whole podcast on its own. I didn't want the puppy, and I was out of town, and my surprise puppy. But
that's like having the surprise baby.
Yeah, but it's really kind of, I don't know. It's not doing Christmas any favors in our house because our house, which I usually really enjoy the decorations and just the festive atmosphere. Now there's tarps on the floor and there's pee on the floor. And just today, my husband's like, we need to move the tree and the presents, out of the house because the puppy's getting, somewhere where the puppy can't go.
Oh, golly.
So.
You're going to be one of those people that hangs your tree from the ceiling. Have you seen these people?
I don't want to do that.
No. Or puts the big giant fence around their tree so the dog can't get to it.
I don't want to do that. I didn't want a dog. So I think everything that's like
every extra step,
every extra thing is kind of bothering me. So
understandably,
yeah,
I get it. It's a weird sitch for sure. And I'm sorry. Yeah. I know you love it. You love your home. You love the festivities.
My home. It's a mess right now. It's a mess.
Hopefully it's just a chapter.
Yeah, I hope it's just this year. Yes.
Yeah. Hopefully. It's haunting me. Besides all the wrapping I should look at it differently, that we get to do. Like the fact that I have things to wrap is a blessing. And I'm excited for that. I don't think there's anything really haunting me. This is always a lovely time of year, building up to winter break. It was an awesome last few weeks of school. Typically, elementary school kids, perhaps kids of all ages, are losing their dang minds right before winter break. And I know teachers are for sure.
Yeah, well, there's so much extra that we have to do. I don't know that people know what all we do right before the holidays
God.
for all 30 kids, 25 kids, you know.
Right.
We give them an experience because we don't know what kind of experiences they get outside of school. So
Extra crafts and extra
Yeah.
little celebrations, and you are coordinating with parents to bring in treats and snacks and goodies, and there's music and there's Spirit Week dress ups and all the
so
things. So
much.
it's wonderful, except that it throws off all routine, which ironically that's also what most of our kids need the most is that routine and knowing what's coming. And so it creates this hubbub atmosphere that can increase anxiety for everybody. As a specialist, I don't have to absorb so much of that because they're in and out of my room anyway, all week long. But so I just kind of get the fun bits of them, the excited bits, but not the over sugared, crashed out, versions of them. It was lovely. It was a lovely week. But I actually posted to my personal Facebook page a picture of with no faces visible, of course, but a couple of kindergartners. And I said something to the effect of, at the end of Friday, I had 0 Fs left to give. So here are 2 kindergartners using a chomp saw and a 3D pen, which are 2 pieces of equipment that I reserve for 4th and 5th graders with direct supervision. And I was like, go for it, kindergartners.
What did they make? Was it a disaster?
I just gave them some tag board because that's much easier to cut than corrugated cardboard. And that's what the chomp saw is designed to do, is cut cardboard. So I just said, here's some tag board, draw a shape, and then cut it out. And here's the basics of how it works. And I sat right there at the table.
Yeah.
But I wasn't hand over handing it. I wasn't like giving any specific instructions. And then even with the 3D pen, I was like, it's hot, like hot glue. Don't put it on your skin. Don't touch the end of it. Take the shape that you just cut out of the chomp saw and cover it in 3D filament. Have fun. And that was it. They had a blast.
I bet.
So I had other stations going around the room for them to experiment with and play with, but they wanted to one at a time come check out those 2 things. So of course they did.
For them, yeah.
When you tell them, normally only the big kids get to do this, but happy holidays. Miss Yoko is phoning it in. They didn't know that. They just thought they were getting to do something special.
Yeah.
So easy for me. So yeah, I don't really have anything haunting me right now. I've not had any continued paranormal experience at my house.
Oh, good.
Yeah, nothing that I've noticed anyway. Everything seems normal. Nothing out of the ordinary. Thank God. I can only handle maybe one a quarter. Like once every few months, go ahead and hit me with something weird. But any more than that, I'd be a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
Right. So should we get into it?
Let's do it.
So have you ever done, this is kind of random, but have you ever done one of the ghost tours or ghost walks in Seattle?
Yeah, I did the underground one.
Okay, so I've done 2. I've done the underground one, and I did another one above ground. That was, I think, the market was the
market.
Pike
Yeah,
Place market was sort of the center of it. But we walked all over that market, downtown part of Seattle. Started in the market, and I think it's actually called Market Ghost Tours.
That sounds fun.
It's really fun.
The underground ghost tour is really cool because you learn about the history of Seattle, and you learn that Seattle was built on silt, and I don't really know what silt is, but sandy. Yeah, ground. So Seattle used to be a lot lower, and they
closer to the water,
and then they built it up, but they still have like some of the building structures that go down below what you think is the level ground. Yep. So that's why it's called the underground tour, because you're down under the sidewalks,
seeing some of the original structure
like it's like original like storefronts and buildings and things that people would have walked by.
Yep.
When the ground was at a lower level. In
our earlier days where we were logging and miners would pass through on their way to Alaska, and so logging was a huge one, of course, fishing, shipping, things like that, massive industries, huge what's the word I'm looking for, epicenter of local indigenous trade.
Yes.
So a lot of Pacific coastal tribal nations would come to the Chief Sealth area to conduct business and meet up and have gatherings of all kinds. So much rich history, a lot of history then, of course, of alcohol, sex work, violence, tied to all those things where you have a transient population. And then the whole thing caught on fire. Yeah, so there was the Seattle fire, and then we built sort of also on top of that. So you can, when you're under there, you could see like burned out timber from some of the old, it's really cool, but also pretty spooky. When I did the tour, I didn't encounter anything paranormal in the underground one. But on the above ground one, we had a couple of interesting experiences. And one of the things that we learned about two of the places that we talked about, I'm going to talk about today because they have a relationship. And in this tour, we went to one of the places, which is currently a very well-known pub nowadays, but it used to be a mortuary.
Whoa.
Yes, and that mortuary was tied to this woman that we're going to talk about today, who was quite possibly one of, if not the first, female serial killer in United States history. Yeah.
I wonder if anything you say will spark my memory. But
I'm sure it will.
What you just said doesn't. Like, I'm like, oh, there was a first female serial killer here in Washington?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So when I say the words Starvation Heights, does that ring a bell?
No, it doesn't ring a bell at all. This is great. It's going to be a new story.
Oh my gosh.
Right here in my neighborhood.
All right, well, check it out. So today we are talking about Linda Hazzard and the Butterworth Building.
What a great last name.
Right? 2 Z's.
I want my last name to be Mayhem. Amanda Mayhem.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It also sounds like a WWE character. Bringing the mayhem in the far right corner, or whatever they say. Ding, ding,
yeah.
ding.
And we'd be friends with, what's her name? Hazard.
Yeah, I used to fantasize about being a WWE character.
Yeah.
And I was the wench with a winch. And so like a sparkly set of coveralls.
Yeah.
And then after I defeated my opponent, I would bring out a big like hook and chain and hook it on him and then winch him out of the ring.
Oh my gosh, you'd like hook
I
their
had
skin?
a
You'd
whole, like around their waist, like a big old hook. Like that'd be my gimmick.
Yeah.
I overthought it. For sure.
I'm sorry you never got to do that in your life. You
Maybe it's not too late.
It's not too late.
We could also be a tag team duo in WWE.
Amanda Mayhem.
And the wench with a winch. Who doesn't have a real name. Just an occupation. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, here we go. This is going to be what I call segment 1.
Okay.
The life and crimes.
Why is it 2 parts? It's 2 different stories that
are
going to cross over?
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll see. So the life and crimes of Linda Hazzard is where we're going to start. Linda Burfield Hazzard was born in 1867. She became a self-proclaimed doctor. My favorite kind of doctor.
I love that. I'm so fascinated by people who do that.
You know what feels good? Call me doctor. So I say self-proclaimed because she didn't actually have formal medical training, obviously. Instead, she used a loophole in Washington state law to become licensed as a, quote, fasting specialist.
Fasting?
Mm-hmm.
Like not eating?
Correct.
The doctor of not eating? The
doctor of starvation.
That's weird.
Mm-hmm. Her fasting method was based on the belief that fasting could cleanse the body of toxins. Sure, people are doing that whole intermittent fasting thing. The key word being intermittent, meaning you don't do it all the time.
But she did it all the time.
She didn't.
She just told other people to.
Uh-huh. So,
wow.
Yeah, but it wasn't just skipping that meal or two, like I said. It wasn't intermittent. Patients were put on diets of almost nothing. Thin broths and occasional juices while undergoing harsh treatments like enemas and massages. So,
well, massage doesn't sound so harsh. But
on top of an enema, yeah. No thanks. No thanks. And when I say massage, I'm talking more like a brutal pummeling of the flesh to eliminate these toxins, supposedly. Okay. I think it was more a sadistic.
She sounds like sadistic. Yeah. Like we were talking about that doctor who invented the what's that called? Where you go through the eye, the lobotomy.
Yeah, through the nose.
What if he wasn't a doctor either? What if he's like just self-proclaimed doctor?
I don't know. I don't know enough about that.
I don't either.
So patients. Okay. Surprisingly, this brutal treatment led to many patients dying.
Surprise.
Yeah. She even ran a sanitarium in Olalla, Washington. Have you heard of Olalla? It's out on the peninsula. It's
I do. I have heard of Olalla. Sorry, my brain is going through sanitarium. Please. Because sanitarium, to me, my initial thought, because of the word sanitary, is like, oh, it's a clean place. But then I have to like translate my own brain and remind myself, oh, that's
an asylum, like a mental health asylum. Yeah. So for like sanitarium.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was called Wilderness Heights, nicknamed Starvation Heights by the locals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. She was eventually convicted of manslaughter in 1912. after the death of a wealthy British woman named Claire Williamson. So here's what would happen. She would get these people, oftentimes wealthy people. Remember, this is before internet, before people could communicate readily with one another. So they would come from across the country or whatever, come to her for treatment. Somehow she would lure them out to her beautiful Wilderness Heights estate, and then she would weaken them with this treatment she said was going to clean their bodies of toxins, etc. And in their weakened physical state, then of course the mental state also weakens. And then she would have them sign over their power of attorney to her.
What?
So then she would have control over their financials. And this is how she became wealthy and would get their money. And they were so far removed from major civilization. They were, out in Olalla, so it's not right next to Seattle. It takes a trek to get there.
Right.
Plus, they would come from the East Coast, things like that. And so she would, there's some really intense stories. There's books written about her, articles written about her, things she did. There were a pair of sisters that were very famous that she abused both of them, and one tried to save the other at one point, and then she ended up, they didn't. One didn't make it for sure.
Horrible.
Yeah, she was awful.
But it's
awful.
smart. Like, it sounds like she really kind of smartly stole from all these people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the, like you think of like Black Widow things where they would marry wealthy people, and men have done it too, right? They either take out a life insurance policy on a spouse or marry someone who already has one or is independently wealthy, and then they inherit everything once that person is disappeared or unalived in some way. So, but eventually these people being drawn to her in desperation for this miracle cure ended up being her undoing. Her greed was her undoing. Okay. She would target these wealthy patients, convincing them to sign over their assets, and then she starved them to death. And here's where things get eerie. Some of her victims were taken to the Butterworth mortuary in Seattle.
I'm sorry, Butterworth.
I know, that terrible stereotypical icon. But now known as the Butterworth Building. And so it's also famous for being Kell's Irish Pub.
Oh, yeah, floor. That's super famous.
Yeah, great Irish bar. And that's where we spent some time there. So let's talk about the Butterworth Building. So they had this deal, she and the people running the mortuary, where she would, they would trade out the bodies. So these people would die. They would swap out for visitation from loved ones so that they wouldn't notice that they were really starved. So somehow they would fool people. She paid them under the table so that they wouldn't reveal her secrets and vice versa. And they had this sort of symbiotic relationship. Well, if people are dead and maybe you don't make them up so heavily you can't tell, or if you haven't seen them in years and years and years, you may not even know what they look like anymore.
I guess. So they just tried to make them look healthy? Healthy?
Not super skinny. Yeah.
I don't know how you would do that.
Withered away.
It'd be like some major contouring or something.
I think you pick a different body and you just say that this was them. And they just changed. They were unwell and
So they're showing other people's bodies to the families, and the families aren't even really catching it. Obviously, until they do. But at some point they're going to catch it. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had this
not so smart
shady dealing.
So this is the not so smart part.
Yeah. And also that makes me think of like death portraits, how a lot of people wouldn't get their first professional portraits done unless someone died, especially for children. So if they wanted to have a memory of their child, they didn't take family portraits. They didn't take school pictures. They would put some money toward it if they could upon that child's death. So then the child would often be posed as if it were alive, held up with wires and string and wooden little pedestals and things so that they could get their picture taken. Yeah. I know. Death photography.
Do that?
But if you didn't have anything else of your child, of course you would do that if you could scrape together enough pennies to make it happen.
Yeah, but I mean like the job of being the poser.
It's money.
I guess.
It's money.
I guess.
I mean, I think of it like a funeral director now. That's what they're doing. If you are embalmed and you get your makeup put on so you can have an open casket funeral. Yeah. That's what someone's doing.
I guess, but this seems more extreme to me because if they're hanging them up with strings and putting wire in their clothes to hold them up, that's a whole other level.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Butterworth Building was built in 1903. Seattle's first purpose-built mortuary. Purpose-built, so it didn't accidentally become a mortuary. And it was part of the Butterworth and Sons mortuary business, located in what is now the historic Pioneer Square. And it has a dark, which also, that whole area, dark history of its own.
Well, that whole area is where the underground tours.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole area is where like there were the fires and the
great bars, pubs, live music now, but a lot of history. There's also, we have a bit of a houseless.
Yeah, I don't know if it
issue.
is filled with great bars and stuff and been taken over by.
It still is. Well, it is in that it's almost like when you go now, it's the houseless population is just like part of the backdrop. It's so interesting, right? Because like I've never once been bothered by a houseless person. They're not out to get me. Like it's their situation right now and it sucks, and oftentimes there's drugs involved or this or that, but it's not about me. Right. And so people still go. There's still tourism. There's still things happening there. There's a great Creole restaurant down there, the Creole Kitchen, amazing restaurant. And then one of my dear friends, shout out to Brandy, her father operated the Comedy Underground there for
incredible. Decades. That's so cool.
So, and it's still going. Mm-hmm. It's still there. What do you think it is about mortuaries, Amanda, that makes them such hotspots for paranormal activity?
I have no idea, because I don't understand. I don't know what I believe about ghosts and spirits, like in general. Like I know people have incredible experiences that they can't explain, that they tie to spirits of loved ones or spirits of the past. But that I also hear a lot of stories about like near-death experiences where people are like, oh, I went somewhere, my spirit went somewhere and it wasn't here on the planet anymore. So, and then there's probably thousands of other theories in between those spectrums. So I don't know that I believe that like a mortuary would just be filled with all these spirits of people who have just passed. Right. Who are like, where do I go? What's going on? But they have a lot of I do know they have a lot of stories.
Yeah. I think of it almost like a train station. Like if there's a bunch of energy there, that might be partly why, is that people maybe are, the slower processors like myself. Mm-hmm. Maybe, we die somewhere else, but we're still sort of attached physically, energetically to my body. Like, hey, wait, am I just getting in the car with the body? Cool. Okay. So we're going all right. So now we're at this place. Just try to process it. Like, right. What's going on? Where do I go next? I don't know that I really want to leave this body, but I obviously have to. I don't know. Maybe it's like a transitional place for some folks.
And people haven't crossed that bridge or gone through the light or whatever they're hanging out. Or what if it's, how sometimes people claim that other entities will come and guide them, spirit guides, family members, whatever, so you pass over and these other entities are there to be with you. Maybe those entities are still hanging around at the mortuary. They've helped someone,
or they're waiting for someone to arrive.
I really don't know, though. I'm pulling ideas out of the air.
Well, that's really all we have, right? Like, it's all theory at this point, unless, maybe there are some people who know, but even their personal experiences, they only know for themselves what their experience was. Right. The potential is so vast. So I don't know. But I think it's an interesting question, and I definitely have heard, like you, so many stories of people working in the funeral business who have lots of stories. Yes. Lots and lots. So, at this time, during Linda Hazzard's time in the 1900s, Seattle, like we talked about earlier, was a rough and tumble port city. And Mr. Butterworth and Sons handled many of the city's dead, including victims of crimes, accidents, and diseases. So it's not a huge leap to imagine why so many believed the building is haunted. Tons of traumatic death, as well as just your run-of-the-mill. That's a terrible lumber industry pun, but your run-of-the-mill deaths.
You goose.
I know.
I love it.
Add to the fact that some of Linda Hazzard's victims were processed there. So the residual energy, theoretically, could be pretty desperate, feeling betrayed, alone, not understanding. Yeah. How did I get here? How did I let this happen?
Well, and how far, this is what I was just looking at. How far is Olalla from Seattle?
Well, as the crow flies nowadays, not super far. But back then? Oh my gosh.
That would have been a whole day's journey, right?
A couple days, probably.
Oh gosh, it's on the peninsula.
So it's across the Puget Sound.
There's nowhere closer she could have brought the bodies for processing, or
I think she had a special deal.
She's had that deal with them. Yeah. So she would take them all the way up.
By boat, I guess. or
Wow,
I guess
that's a
all
whole
the way
journey.
around.
I'm looking at a map right now. If you look up Olalla to Seattle and imagine it in the before
1900s, before the ferry system.
Yeah, like how would they? That would have been a whole journey. That's like the Oregon Trail journey
Mm-hmm. With dead bodies
with
in
dead
the back.
bodies in the back. That's wild.
And she probably had to do it herself because you couldn't entrust too many other people.
Oh my gosh! And if she had to do it herself, then she probably would only make the trip so often. So she'd probably like store up.
And I don't think she took very many at a time. Like, this wasn't like a sanitarium full of people. Like, she would have a couple people at a time.
Okay.
Yeah, as I understand it anyway. So this place now houses, the Butterworth Building now houses Kel's Irish Pub. And employees and visitors have reported lots of paranormal activity to this day. So objects moving on their own, disembodied voices, shadowy figures. One of the most famous stories is my favorite. Involves the apparition of a young girl seen on the pub's staircase. Now, this is the paranormal experience that my husband and I had when we did this tour.
I'm excited.
So we had our cell phones, and everybody did. And we were out on the sidewalk looking in on the back side of this building. So where this famous staircase is, where they frequently have seen this ghostly child. So you're looking through these rounded glass windows into this building, and there's a staircase on the left. So we're all, of course, trying to take pictures with our phones just for funsies. It's at nighttime. See if we can capture anything on our cameras. Well, I'm not kidding. Both of us go to hold up our phones, and our phones just go completely dead.
Oh, that's such a wild phenomenon.
Completely dead. Not off.
Right.
Like, we powered them off. And we could not get them to turn back on until we walked away, and we got a couple of blocks away, and then our phones turned back on.
That's wild.
And it happened to both of us at exactly the same time.
Yeah, and I've heard so many stories about the power drain. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was cool. So people have wondered, could she be a victim tied to the building's mortuary days? Here's another question for you. What's your take on child apparitions? Why do they seem to affect people more than other types of hauntings?
I don't know, but I don't know why. Someone told me, I go on Facebook and I've been like engaging with people who like the same things we do. So there was someone recently who told me they believe that when children continue to grow in the spirit world up to...
I believe that.
So they don't stay as babies or children. You believe that? So then if you're seeing a child ghost, you're just seeing them in that moment in time. And if you came back 10 years later, they wouldn't be a child ghost anymore? I don't know.
That is definitely an intersection of theories that doesn't add up.
Right. I don't know why people claim to see child ghosts more often. Maybe what we think are ghosts or whatever we're seeing is short in stature or smaller, and that makes us think that it's a child. Maybe when we catch like EVPs or weird voice phenomenon, it sounds like giggling or a child's voice, whatever it is, whatever we're hearing. I really don't know.
Or maybe, I've heard people have kind of a dark theory on it that sometimes it's because children are so non-threatening that other entities that might mean us harm present as innocent children.
Oh,
so that we
like
trust
the trickster
them.
thing.
Yeah. Also could be that just like in life, I think kids are much more attuned to the spirit world when they're little. Maybe it's the same kind of on the flip side. Like they're more attuned to connecting to the human
That's
world.
An interesting theory. Yeah.
I don't know.
You make me think, you just reminded me for a second of the episode we did on the black-eyed kids, possibly being something really sinister that was pretending to be a kid. I hadn't thought about that with kid ghosts, kid spirits.
Who knows? I've never encountered a child like spirit like in a paranormal way, like giggling or voices or like playing with a toy or the pitter patter of little feet or anything like that. I've never experienced that, but that's so common. All of those things. Okay, so segment 3. So segment 1, introduce you to Linda Hazzard and her deal. 2, Butterworth Building. 3, paranormal experiences now at Starvation Heights and the Butterworth Building. When we talk about residual energy, like where it's like on repeat, on like a recording,
heard of that
things
too.
just happening over and over again, it's impossible to ignore the trauma associated with Linda Hazzard's story. So we're going to start with her infamous sanitarium in Olalla and what's going on to this day. So locals and visitors to the Wilderness Heights site, nicknamed Starvation Heights, have reported some deeply unsettling phenomena. People, and I totally want to go.
Is the building still there? What's it look like? I'm going to Google it.
Google it. Yeah, you got to see. But people say they hear faint cries or moans, which they believe could be echoes of the patients who suffered and died there.
Ew.
Yeah. The original buildings are gone, so you may not find anything today, but you could see what it looked like in the past. But the land itself seems to hold on to some memories, according to visitors.
Okay.
A few ghost hunters who've explored the area reported sudden drops in temperature, unexplained feelings of dread, and even the sound of footsteps crunching on gravel, despite being completely alone. Yeesh. Also, that land is going to have a lot of memories from indigenous people throughout his, like, not just Linda Hazzard and her patients. Like, that land, Washington State, coastal, Pacific coastal tribal nations, I mean, were all over and abundant and thriving until white settlers came in and devastated some things. So some witnesses have also claimed to see, oh God, what I wouldn't give, to see the figure of a woman in a white dress pacing in the distance. They've wondered if that could be Linda herself, hopefully restless because of her crimes.
We should go there, Lindz. That's
it.
Really
road
far
trip.
from us.
Road trip.
But I can't tell on Google, just in the minute I have here, if buildings are gone, is it just like a field, an overgrown field, or was something else put in its place?
When you Google Starvation Heights or Wilderness Heights, does anything come up on Google Maps?
It comes up like I'll do it on the map. On Google, it brings up like history, like that you're going over here.
I'm sure there's at least signage. I would hope. I mean, for tourism alone, it would be foolish not to have at least a sign.
Do you know there's also a Starvation Heights in Oregon?
Really?
Yeah, that's coming up on the map before the Washington one.
Well, I hadn't heard that she had like a franchise.
Maybe. Or maybe it was just another.
She like sold the rights to it. Here, you can have a franchise.
Well, maybe like at that time, I don't know, but people were like,
it might have been a trend.
It might have been a trend where people were like, we have all kinds of weird health trends now. Maybe at that time.
We're always looking for a miracle cure.
Yeah. Come to my
something
resort.
Where we don't have to work very hard and can preferably just pay for some money and have all of our problems solved.
I'm not having any Olalla is not a big town.
No.
It's very small. There's not a lot there.
And I think that might have been part of the point. Like, she went somewhere very uninhabited.
Yeah. That would be
a fun road trip to see if there's anything else.
Yeah.
Another one, this is a total tangent, but there, what is it? It's I'm going to Google it really quick. There's an old mental health hospital. It's not in operation anymore and hasn't been for quite some time. It's a penitentiary, or what's the word I'm looking? Mental health hospital. Is it Northwestern State Hospital? Because of course we still have Western State Hospital, but I think there's Northwestern State Hospital as well.
I feel like if you're ghost hunting at the old mental health hospitals, you have more chance of seeing something, just because we don't know if spirits are the souls or if it's like residual energy. And if it's even a phenomenon that exists. I don't know what I believe. I want to be clear about I don't know that I believe any of this, but if it's souls of people, you have a chance of hitting it there at a
just because it's more highly populated, with, folks having gone through there.
A lot of them would have gone through and would have passed away. And if it's residual energy, a lot of people would have experienced a lot of negative energy. So you have I don't know, if you're betting, if you're a betting person, you have a better chance of hitting something paranormal.
Of hitting the jackpot, paranormal jackpot. Yeah, your odds are much greater for sure. Yeah, it's Northern State Hospital, and it's in Cedro Woolley, which is also not far from here. It's not far. And it's on the National Register of Historical Places, located 4 miles northeast from the city, and you have to hike into it, from what I understand. So it's it's closed, of course, and there was a murder there. Lots of murders and lots of trauma, and it was closed in 19. Gosh, it was open pretty late. 1973. 1973. It closed in 1973. Or no, I'm sorry. Golly, 19. Oh, it's so hard to tell. But I think it closed maybe in the 1950s. But they kept making discoveries of things in the 70s and in the 80s. And in 1995, it was revealed that by the United States Department of Energy that radiation experiments were conducted on patients.
Oh my gosh!
They were
my
iron
gosh.
55, whatever that is, was injected into the veins of patients at 100 microcurie dosages and monitored over a period of months. Ugh.
I don't know about you, but I get really creeped out when I think about the mental health hospitals from hundreds of years ago as a woman.
Oh my gosh.
Anytime that I've just been extra cranky or, non-compliant, like I think of those times and I'm like, wow, if I were here 150 years ago, my husband could just put me away and just be like, she's hysterical.
Yep.
Just because I disagree or just because I'm, like I said, moody.
Mm-hmm.
It's freak. So they have like an extra layer of fear for me as a woman.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I really I stay up at night sometimes like just thinking about women that did go through that and how sad that is. And then to know that you just give up all your rights. You're not like you have a lot of rights as a woman anyway,
right.
But you get there and like they can do experiments on you. They can take your hair. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah. Yep.
Whatever they want.
Yep. Anytime there's an oppressed group, a marginalized group, they historically become the victims of experimentation. They're the guinea pigs to learn how to help to help oppressors. So whether it's Jews and other victims of the concentration camps were experimented on in horrendous, horrific multitude of ways, or enslaved populations, or even post-slavery in Jim Crow era and onward for a long time, and some would argue even still, experimenting on black populations, and then I have such just yicky feelings about all the things we learned medically through that. Like, yeah, some discoveries were made that are very beneficial today, but at the cost
there.
Yes. It's awful. Like, surely there had to be a better way. I mean, obviously there had to be a better way.
Right.
And yeah, it's a really, really hard, deep, yucky minefield to get into. Right. Of medical discoveries and how we were able to further medicine through horrors against our fellow human beings. It's just awful. Yuck. Yeah. And hopefully the souls of the perpetrators are paying for it, I hope. No, that's not very loving and forgiving of me, but F them. I do not care. Okay, so shifting to the Butterworth Building now. So out on the land of the Starvation Heights, Wilderness Heights, whatever, they might see potentially Linda herself or the soul of a wandering victim in white. And sounds, footsteps, etc., moans. But then back at the pub, it has a reputation all its own, even without the connection to Linda Hazzard. So visitors to Kells, we got to go sometime. I thought about this when we were going to record a couple weeks ago, and I thought I was going to do this one. Then we ended up splitting it into 2 parts, and that episode we split it into 2 parts. And so then I was like, oh, I want to take Amanda up and do Kells. Just go get a beer, even though I don't drink beer, but go get a beer and have some fish and chips and hang out.
Maybe we
Seattle.
can even wander a little bit, be like, well, we're going to the bathroom and see if we can find
somehow
some
we end up locked in a basement somewhere. Now it's an escape room. One of the most chilling stories is of a figure that seems to follow people up and down the staircase. Some employees even claim they feel a hand on their back, only to turn around and find no one there. they see shadowy figures in the mirrors. There's mirrors all over the place.
Oh, just in the mirror.
Yeah, this one is
that's
hilarious
interesting.
to me. There's also the young girl, often seen near the staircase, that same girl that we tried to photograph, or, this cracks me up, in the back corner of the pub. So can you imagine? You're just like, who let that kid in? We're just going to let that kid sit back there? Okay.
I love it.
Some believe she's tied to the building's history as a mortuary, though her specific connection remains a mystery. And if I'm a ghost, an Irish pub is not the worst place to be connected to.
Also, kids were probably allowed in pubs.
Oh, yeah.
In previous time, right? Like if you work there and you
Absolutely
live upstairs and you've got 10 kids, you probably
they
have
were
them
not
help out.
nearly as regulated as they
Right.
are by laws and age restrictions now. Like my kids are super stoked about going to Europe this summer when they can, like in Ireland.
Yeah.
My son will turn 16 in Iceland this summer while we're there.
Wow.
And I don't know what the drinking age is there, but I'm pretty sure it's probably not 21.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know for sure when we're in Ireland and stuff, I'm sure he'll have a little Guinness or something. My daughter will be 18, so for sure, she could imbibe if she wants to, which I'm kind of hoping the mystery is sucked out when your parents are right there going, yeah, go for it. Here, we'll buy you a shot.
Right.
Let's see what happens, sis.
Well, my dad would let me drink with him when I was a little kid, but it wasn't like a lot of, he would have a beer every day when he came home from work, a Rainier beer. Talking about Washington.
Classic.
Yeah. And you remember those little Dixie cups that we had to brush our teeth, like wash our mouth out? He would put in this teeny on the very bottom of the Dixie cup a little bit of his Rainier beer, and so I had Rainier beer all the time.
Just to toast the end of the day with Dad.
And then we'd lay down and watch the news, and
that's cute. That's actually cute. Okay, so we got that little girl. We got to go see if we can find that little girl.
Yeah.
Glasses fall off shelves, chairs shift when no one is near them, and lights flicker unexpectedly. Some might say it's just an old building.
Right.
It's an old building in Seattle, but it's still more fun, I think, to believe in the paranormal.
Do you remember when we went out to eat in Tacoma? It was like right when I first moved here. I was about to move here. We went out to eat in Tacoma at the
What's the old spaghetti
melting
factory?
pot or spaghetti factory, something.
Okay.
And a glass fell off the counter in the bar, and you saw it. And when the waitress came over, you were like, "Did you see that glass just fall off the table?" You don't remember this?
I have no memory of this.
And the waitress was like, "Oh yeah, that happens sometimes. We think we have like a ghost or a spirit." And
I have no memory of that.
yeah,
this happens to me all the
That's
time.
wild.
I think I have Alzheimer's.
I don't think you do.
This happens to me all the
think
time.
you do.
People will show me pictures of me at places. Like, not in the distant, like I'm talking in the last 10, 15 years. They'll show me a picture of me at like Kathy Griffin comedy show. I have no memory of it.
Oh.
And that was like, let's see, that would have been about 14 years ago.
But I have a theory that we cannot hold every day, every moment in our head. I think we choose like something about that moment in time. I remember because it was like
siphoned out,
wild for me or something. I don't know, it just stuck in a memory. But for you, maybe you'd seen it before, or you just.
I might have just been so excited that you'd moved back here that was my focus more than anything else. Screw that glass flying off. Oh man. Okay, so they also get recorded EVPs, and you can get these online. You can find some for recorded at Kel's. Fake voices saying things like "help" or "why."
But it's just the one word. That's what I said on our
episode
with
my whole thing.
Yeah, because you heard like 2 whole sentences.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's wild.
And I forgive you. Like I've said it in that space. I've said it a couple times. Like whatever. I forgive you. Forgive yourself. Whatever it was. It's okay. One paranormal investigator, mentioned this person sounds a bit like a dramatic person, but feeling overwhelmed with nausea and weakness in the Butterworth basement. We gotta get to the basement.
I want to go to it's always the basement. I was just
Why?
reading.
Basements and attics, man.
I was just reading about the Sally House today. Sally House is super famous.
That?
Oh, it's super famous. Oh my gosh.
Is it in Washington?
No. I'm sure
Sally
you've heard of the
House?
Sally House. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Like crazy paranormal stuff happened and it's like I think it's in the Midwest, but okay, that's another story. But anyway, it's very famous for paranormal activity, and the basement's like the most where they get the most
Is it
activity.
because that's where not a lot's happening? Like the hub of the home is usually the main floor, whatever the main floor is, where your kitchen, living room, dining room is. And that's where everybody's chilling 90% of the time in a house. Attics and basements are typically used for storage or occasional use. And so if I'm a ghost and I want to be left the H alone,
yeah,
I'm going to a closet in the basement.
Yeah, I guess.
Make my own room, I guess. I don't know.
to a space that isn't invaded by all these other people you don't know.
Speaking of like other houses like that, I just heard today, very brief encounter on Reels, maybe on Facebook, that the Conjuring house is being closed to the public. Have you heard that?
No. Why would they close it? They probably make a lot of money.
I just saw that it's been closed for good to the public, and it's for the best, is what it said. So I need to look into it some more.
Oh my gosh!
It also sounds a little bit like a great plug for more tourism.
Right, it does. Or another movie.
You get there while you can. Okay, so let's see. These stories make me think a lot about like just abuse of humanity and how you can capitalize on that is one thing, but. Not that I plan to, but just saying, like, that is something that is throughout history. How can I capitalize on someone else's pain and suffering rather than just helping? Right. Like, just fine. Did Dr. quote unquote Hazzard really think that what she had was a cure for what ails people? Or did she know from jump, like, these morons will fall for anything?
She had to know, because if she was really a scientist, if she was really had gotten her doctorate degree for real and gone through like training in the scientific method, she would have been looking at her data constantly and recognizing she's not getting the result from the treatment that she's prescribing, which means you need a new intervention, you need a new prescription, but she continued to prescribe the starvation. The same thing, getting the same result each time. Absolutely, this is when you become a murderer.
Yeah. Maybe it started out innocently, like she was a naturopath of her time and really thought, I mean, they did bloodletting, right? This was still in the era of bloodletting. So, and maybe it was along those lines of like, we just need to purge the body of toxins. Well, what's one easy way to do that? Don't give it anything to start with. So, we just purge whatever's in there, and then the body, I don't know, the body will just heal itself from the inside out. But that's just not how it works. So maybe it started out innocently.
I mean, do we have any stories of people who went to her facility for treatment and
recovered?
Came out recovered and better?
No.
Every single one who went there.
I don't think there were a lot, but yeah.
Oh, gosh.
There might have been an escapee, but it's not coming to mind.
But I don't know if I mean escapee. I mean someone.
But remember,
genuinely
folks, this is not an educational podcast unless you educate us. So there's probably people listening right now going, "Oh my God, my great grandmother escaped from Starvation Heights. There's an entire documentary series about her on PBS. How do you not know?"
Our podcast is literally like 45 minutes every week of us
wondering.
What is this?
Welcome to the wondering zone.
We don't know anything.
We don't know, but it's fascinating to wonder. It sucks for those people, big time. But there are some really, really great books about Linda Hazzard. There's one called Starvation Heights. I owned it at one time. I don't know if I still do. I want to be a ghost hunter exploring that land for sure. We got to take a road trip, and then we got to go to Kells. Maybe we could do both. Like, I don't know if it's possible to go up, have lunch, take a ferry over, wander around, come back.
Come back and share our experience on the podcast. Wouldn't you think anybody would want to even hear that? What if nothing happens?
It would just be a mini-sode. A mini episode. That's all I got for today. It was just a little bit about Linda Hazzard and Starvation.
That's great.
Heights. Yeah.
I didn't know any of that. I really didn't.
At that time, like, as a chubby woman, I very easily would have been like, sounds great.
Sign me up.
Sign me up. I can't starve myself on my own. I need somebody to beat it into me. Take my money.
Oh my God.
Which is terrible. I'm learning to love myself. One Reese's peanut butter cup at a time. All right. Well.
I love it. Class dismissed.
And don't open the door unless it's to the basement, because basements are awesome.